Hey everyone, this is Adam Ellenboss from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to continue our exploration of the Sun's upcoming conjunction with Saturn in the sign of Pisces, which is a death and rebirth moment for Saturn. And today I want to explore some of the archetypal significations of Saturn that have to do with death and that have to do with the dying process, you might say, of an old Saturn, a Saturn that is preparing for a rebirth in this conjunction with the Sun. So we're going to look at three things that dying Saturn has to say that we might pay attention to. Now, today is a little deeper archetypal focus on Saturn. So if you want a broader picture of what's going on, take a look at the video I did yesterday where we look at the Sun Saturn conjunction from the standpoint of the whole sign horoscopes. You can get maybe more general or topical information that way. Today is a bit of an exploration, an archetypal exploration, I should say. So, anyway, that is our goal for today. I cannot believe, by the way, in the past week, how many creative descriptions of pressing or tapping the like button have come in. Um, I'll never be the same person. That's basically that is basically what has happened thanks to you guys. I have seen people pirouetting on the like button. I think there was a lot of stroking. there was it got a little PG-13 to rated R with some of you guys. But anyways, if you would lovingly tap, press, click, smash, stomp uh, the like button, that is much appreciated. And subscribe if you're new to the channel. It's great to have you here. Share your comments and reflections. We love to hear from you guys. You can find a transcript of any of my daily talks, including today's, on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Now, I want to take you over there because we have the next webinar coming up, which you may want to know about. So you go to nightlightastrology.com, click on the live events tab there, or go up to events on the drop down menu and click live events, either way. And you will see that our next monthly webinar, which is March 14th, is on Neptune in love. So we started off the series looking at Pluto in love. Next up, we will be looking at Neptune's significations when it comes to love, marriage, sex, relationships, both in the way that it shows up in your birth chart, potentially, as well as by transits to planets in the birth chart. We're going to talk about what Neptune is doing, how to notice Neptune, how to work with Neptune, how to not get blown over by the outer planets in love. So, like, what to avoid, and also, like, what is Neptune really like? What is Neptune trying to teach us? How is Neptune trying to transform and heal us through the significations that are involved with love and relationships? So anyway, you can check that out. It's $20 to attend. If you want, you could even sign up for April's on Uranus. It's $20 to attend. If you cannot make it live, afterward, everyone who registers is also sent a download link so that you can download and watch the recording on your own time. So yeah, it's 7 to 9 p.m. March 14th. I hope to see some of you there. All right, let's bring up the real-time clock now, and we are going to take a look at this synodic reset again today. So, the synodic reset. Here we are, and now on Thursday, February 22nd, we can see that the two are about 6 degrees away. So let's fast forward this, especially when they get to within about 3 degrees of each other, which is Sunday, February 25th. That's when things really start cooking. And then you're going to notice the conjunction. Now, one thing I want to throw in here, which we will be coming back to again next week, is the fact that this is a triple conjunction with Mercury, who's debilitated. They're all Cazimi, so the reset moment is very powerful with Mercury also involved. Today we're just looking at Saturn again, but we'll be throwing that back in next week.
Crumbly?
So their
Should be
synodic moment of
crummy.
reset,
Not
the actual
crumbly, you
rebirthing moment,
stupid AI. Should be
happens
crummy, man.
February
Come on.
28th.
Blew
That's
it.
middle of next week. But this is the long, slow burn. So I really want people out. We want to get out in front of this one on an archetypal level. You can see that the separation then happens within 3 degrees by about Sunday, March 3rd. And then if you give it 15 degrees, which is about the average space in which you'll see 15 degrees of separation when a planet is just about to appear. So you get to about the middle of March, and Saturn would be coming up very early as a morning star. So anyway, and then by that time we're getting closer, I should say, to Mercury's retrograde in April in Aries, and eclipse season is upon us, and all the fun stuff starts happening. So All right. Well, there is uh, a way of looking at the synodic cycle between Saturn and the Sun that astrologers have been using for thousands of years. It has to do with its death and rebirth. When the Sun is this close to conjoining Saturn, Saturn is an old Saturn. And so it's thought of as all significations related to Saturn right now have a little extra emphasis on death and dying. Of course, just like the death card in the tarot, you can think of it as metaphorical, as suggestive, as symbolic. It does not have to be literal. Um, but the death and dying piece is important because Saturn's death and dying is very different than Pluto's. It's very different than Uranus. If you describe Uranus's death and dying, it's more like getting electrocuted. If you describe Neptune's, it's like being on a funeral pyre. So they're called funeral pyre, and burning in flames while being shipped out into the ocean. If you describe Pluto's, it might be a little bit more like the slow descent into the grave, being lowered down in a casket. So so many planets. There's no planet that like rules death, right? There's so many different planets that have significations related to death. Even Jupiter, did you know? Um, Maybe we'll talk about that in a separate video. But when it comes to Saturn, you really are getting the idea of age and time and deterioration and winter and old age and things that have reached their expiration date, which means they have history behind them. There's consequence and process. These are all metaphors. Don't take them literally, but sometimes they really do have like literal history. But so it's important that when we have this moment of a dying Saturn, um, especially again considering that there's a pretty powerful signature of the death and rebirth of Mercury happening at the exact same time. The Cazimi with Saturn and Mercury, the rebirth happens at exactly the same time. So it's a pretty significant moment for Saturn. Um, but this Saturn, as it ages and dies, has to do with things that have a lot of history behind them and a kind of vastness. One of the things we never get right about Saturn is how mystical the planet is. Never do. I mean, so regularly do I see, you know, just kind of pop astrology floating around Instagram or something like that. People are like, oh, Saturn, structures and limits and boundaries. Better to think about Saturn as a gateway. And the gateway between what? Well, let's say, for example, the realm of the planets, because Saturn sits at the edge of the realm of the planets, and the realm beyond, which was connected to the Ade or the Archai, the ideas in the mind of God, the kind of Platonic realm of invisibles and imminent, perfect, shapes and archetypes that form the contents of the mind of the universe. Okay, so Saturn is not just a wall that sits, between you and cool stuff as the voice of conservative tradition or something. It can be that, but remember, Saturn is almost always better understood, especially by people who actually work with Saturn in the psyche, as the threshold or gateway that includes an opening, by the way. It's not just a wall, that includes a threshold that you can cross over between something that's traditional and something that's maybe bucking the trend. We see a lot of that in Aquarius. Something that's very limited and something that transcends limitations, like Capricorn. Capricorn has a lot to do with feeling weighed down by something and working to transcend that which you feel weighs you down. That's a big, huge part of Capricorn. Nobody ever gets that part right, to be totally honest. I mean, and I'm just telling you, like, I myself, 4 or 5 years of doing astrology before I even started understanding some of these things. And I credit a lot of that to having, really good teachers, not like I'm some genius. It's just, you finally figure out that a lot of the cliches, they're just not correct. So anyway, get off my soapbox. All right. So you have thresholds and gateways. Okay. So when you think about a dying Saturn, what you're thinking about is something that involves the crossing over of a threshold between one phase, one era, one age, one maturity level, and another, or from death to new life. That threshold is a big one. I keep thinking, like, where is our dog? Where did she go? She just passed recently, and I'm like, where is she? I know that's really weird because on the level of belief, I'm like, well, she's with Krishna, or she's with the gods, or she's with Mother Earth, or there's lots of ideas in my head that I wouldn't be surprised if they were true, and they make me feel good, but I don't know. I don't know. And there's this void. There's this sense of like unknowing because she crossed over a threshold and I can't see what's beyond that space. Saturn is like that. And Saturn's death is like that in particular. Where there's a threshold, there's a letting go, there's a releasing, there's a crossing through some kind of pathway. And sometimes it's very subtle, especially in a double-bodied water sign like Pisces. You just get the feeling that this might be a little subtler. But this dying Saturn is asking us to keep in mind considerations between things that are known and unknown, that things that can be seen and can't be seen, things that are subtle and things that are gross, distinctions between what is known and what is deeply mysterious to us. And especially that threshold can contain all of those qualities, especially because it's related to a kind of deterioration, a death, and a letting go. And it's a mature, kind of deep, emotionally charged, and it's a little bit romantic, a little like a little bit of a dark reverie kind of state that's suggested by Saturn and Pisces. So this kind of transition is at hand. And again, you may notice it only on the level of mind, moods, emotions, thoughts, feelings. You may notice it in some literal area of your life. Look at the horoscopes we did. But these are things that I think dying Saturn has to say. I'm going to tell you what they are, and then we're going to break them down. So what does dying Saturn have to say? What is some of the wisdom philosophically? Now, you may find that there are other things that aren't on this list, right? So this is not guru hour. This is idea hour, So just take it if it works for you. What dying Saturn has to say. Number one, insignificance is key. I want to read you something. This is the etymology of the word significance, which is a huge word in astrology because one of our most famous words is the word signify, which contains in part the word sign. It means of an omen, a dream, from Old French or directly from Latin, meaning a force or an energy that imports, means, or shows something, that portends, that portends, or that, where is the other one I was looking for? Expresses, foreshadows, declares, makes known. So a lot of the way we live our life every day, not just, astrologically, of course, but in everyday life, we rely on reality signifying itself to us somewhat clearly, not like perfectly clearly. Our minds can't circumscribe eternity, but we rely on life being intelligible, and that there is significance to what's happening, and that we can readily understand that significance. The significance might be only in terms of the flow of mundane events, but often for those of us who are interested in astrology, we're in the habit of looking for significance not only in terms of the logical ordering of things, why are things happening, how is the best to respond for the sake of peace or happiness or productivity or something like that, or avoidance of disaster, but we also are constantly using signs, omens, symbols, patterns in this language in the sky, this kind of revolving symbolic language in the sky. And we use it as a way of finding, locating, working with significance on multiple levels. What a beautiful thing that we get to participate in. I mean, this is why I do it. This is why my enthusiasm is like, it's always being renewed within me, because this language helps me find significance in things by surprise, by accident, suddenly. It's revelatory, it's beautiful. It's like improvisational music you're participating in without knowing it. It's amazing. However, when Saturn is dying and taking us right to the threshold of this kind of moment, especially, again, think a little bit about the romantic qualities of Pisces. This is the exaltation of Venus and the watery feminine sign of Jupiter. It's a sign of wisdom and romance, and it's a sign of tumultuous feelings. We wrestle with the dark and the light in Pisces as we emerge from winter into spring, zodiacally speaking. So we're at a really interesting threshold. And one of the main things that Saturn teaches us is that there are many times in life where the prevailing mood or atmosphere is one of insignificance. Now, that obviously insignificance would mean a lack of or a kind of canceling out of significance. You cannot find the signs, you can't find the order, things are not intelligible or clear, and there is a pervading feeling that nothing is standing out. Especially one of the things that significance does for us is because we as souls, when we discover or relate to the world and we find in it significance from very mundane levels to astrological levels, it gives us a feeling of participating in significance, right? When you discover and relate to significance in the world around you, it also grants you a sense that you are a part of the significance. When you can't find it, when you can't locate the significance, then all of a sudden you feel like I'm insignificant. It's very common. We do this all the time. Of course, there are, I think, great practices we can be in, including meditation, prayer, exercise, all different things that we can do to retain a sense of our immutable significance without necessarily having to locate it constantly. We can just use our breath, for example, and the breath itself has this way of saying significant, you know? So it's not like you have to lose that feeling of being a, but there are relative times, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about, where it's just like, I've lost the plot, you know, and I can't locate myself in a significant universe right now or a significant day. I don't feel significance in my life. But insignificance is actually key. It does a lot of things. It is a valuable ally and one that we lose the blessings of when we curse. So, ways to use insignificance that Saturn teaches us, because Saturn is the great negator, right? So, if the Saturn is natural opposition of Saturn in the zodiac is to the signs of the sun. Saturn's exalted in Libra, opposite the exaltation of the sun in Aries. Saturn's domicile is Aquarius, natural opposite of Leo, the sun sign. Ancient astrologers wrote vividly about the archetypal opposition between the sun and Saturn. The sun grants illumination, so clearly and intelligibly the world exists because of the light of the sun. Saturn represents darkness, a negative space, the space that cancels out and brings us into, at worst, ignorance, or some kind of experience of faith where we can't see because the light is not there, and we have to move through some other felt sense of significance. Saturn's also a mystic, remember. So, but Saturn, generally speaking, is associated with the negation of our sense of light, clarity, intelligibility, and significance. So we have the negation of significance as a Saturnian principle. Here's why insignificance is so important. A few reasons, anyway. Number one, whenever you're asserting an idea, a claim, or a belief, and there are plenty that are worth having, okay? So I'm not anti-ideas, beliefs, action plans, convictions, but we get them, and we lose track of, if we lose track of insignificance in the way that we hold and express the ideas that we believe to be of ultimate value, higher, better, more noble, more virtuous, more important, more urgent than any others. If we forget insignificance, if we don't have some little thread of psychic connection to spaces in our lives where the pervading feeling or atmosphere has been one of insignificance, then we will become jerks. That's the basic idea. And this is not my idea, right? I'm presenting things that I have read from the yogic tradition, from especially the Taoist tradition, the I Ching, the Tao Te Ching, the Stoic tradition. So many contemplatives that have said the same things from different traditions all over the world. What to speak of traditions that don't even have to say it, you just observe that silence plays a huge role in the overall ethos of the people. I remember when I was in the Amazon drinking ayahuasca, and I sat with curanderos who, lived in the jungle for the first time, and I observed how much of the day, a lot of the day, that was spent just being quiet. Sometimes working, sometimes going about, just daily stuff, but just quiet. One of the things that happens in the quiet is everything in quiet, there's a weird way in which if you really embrace quiet and open yourself up to it, everything becomes of equal significance. The birds, the thoughts, the emotions, the feeling, everything's just streaming along like a river. And you're not scooping a cup out to grab some significance. And so, in a way, insignificance is just flowing. And insignificance has this incredible way of leveling things out, of taking away the tendency to subjectively privilege. So that's important because when we are asserting our political ideas or beliefs, which are not unimportant, right? They play a role in the Tao and the unfolding of the Tao in the world. And we're here to live lives on the stage, you know? So we're not here to just transcend the world and check out of it through some kind of, you know, meme about insignificance. But you have to keep a connection to it. It's really important because when people hear someone asserting a powerful idea, a claim, or a belief, and the platform is coming from self-righteousness, this idea grants me more significance than other human beings. This stance, this moral or the moral indignation that I feel, or whatever I think is repugnant, or whatever I think needs to be done better, or whatever I'm fighting for, or whatever I think is most valuable or important, you can hear it in someone when they're coming from a space that, you know, this idea, this claim, this belief grants me greater significance. Somehow it's irritating to us. We sense within it the seeds of eventual destruction. You know, you can just feel it. And I can only reflect on that because I can notice it in myself, and I'm sure you can too if we're being really honest. But when you hear someone that, and it doesn't, they could be using any kind of voice. It doesn't have to be a quiet voice. It could be a very powerful voice. Still, there's like a fiber in there that goes all the way down from the beaming radiance of the sun that might be coming up on the top, but you can hear it hitting the roots of Saturn in the bottom, you know, and that the roots of Saturn in the bottom of their voice are saying something like, ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, nothing is more significant than anything else, because signification, something portending meaning, importance, something flashing, a bird's wing that appears and speaks a message. In the grand scheme of things, all of that rises out of, comes up out of insignificance, the negative space. It comes out of the silence. It comes out of the space where nothing means anything more than anything else, which is really, really hard for us to imagine because we are people that have a hard time holding the presence of opposites. Saturn is the ruler of opposites. Saturn is the ruler of the opposition. And as the threshold or boundary keeper between what we see and what's beyond what we see, what is significant and what is insignificant, these kinds of dualities, Saturn rules them. If we can't learn to hold the tension of those opposites, then we're in trouble. Because, you know, all of the great mystical traditions tell us that it is the ability to hold the tension of the opposites that is most effective in being in the world and in what do you want to call it, the process of enlightenment. But anyway, before we walk off some kind of cliff here with that, when asserting an idea, a claim, or belief, I sometimes, one of the reasons you guys know that I backed away from having anything really to say with the astrology and political events is because I would always get this, and it doesn't matter, well-intending people, believe me, well-intending people and, you know, maybe some jerky people, but it would always be like, I can't believe that you're talking about this when this transit could be or ought to be talking about that. This is more important. This is the thing you should be talking about, right? Like, and you know, mostly just for my own sanity, I just like started just redirecting the, you know, I didn't ever include much about politics, but I just started redirecting things, you know, for my own well-being. But, you know, in that kind of thinking is actually really common. And it's not, I understand it. I don't even like, I'm not trying to judge it because I think it's a very natural part of being like earthly citizens who see that there are things of great importance happening, and we can't help but be more called or drawn to one level of importance over another because, you know, we're here to participate. and our participation will vary. It'll be very
Same.
diverse. Some people are going to be really, super excited about one thing that's very important that's happening, a lot of convictions and beliefs. But here's the thing, my best friends throughout life, as I've evolved and grown and worked through some of these things that we're talking about, at least within myself, I continue to work on them. I am drawn to people who they might have a very, very wide, different variety of uh, beliefs, ideas, claims, things that stand out that are of greater significance. But I find that I am at home with people who, underneath it, understand that it somehow this significance pops out of the river of insignificance, which means that there's a humility. There's just an unknowing that's present. People have very, like me. I'll give you an example of mine. I have very strong beliefs and ideas when it comes to astrology as a form of divination, not a science. That's like definitely one of my soapboxes. You guys have heard me rant about it a million times. But here's the thing: is that I over and over again, when anything like that or any other part of my life has gotten so intense that it becomes, um, yeah, it becomes a platform for ego, for self righteousness, which you can start to feel. It starts developing like that. Something will happen that will bring me back to my own insignificance, and something will bring me back to the insignificance of these ideas or little platforms in comparison to the overwhelming sublime presence of reality, which is in part a river of insignificance, so significant that it's just insignificant. Right? It's a paradox, but that's what it is. And when you're in touch with that, and then you speak to your ideas, claims, or beliefs, you're either tolerable or you're actually compelling. There's that kind of humility is very, very important, and Saturn teaches that insignificance is key, especially when asserting ideas, claims, or beliefs. When judging or offering advice or criticism, solicited or unsolicited, can I remember, can we remember that the significance of our thoughts, our opinions, our ideas, our advice or critique or criticism, whether asked for or not, um, is ultimately also, at the exact same time that it may play a very significant role in some situation, also insignificant. Holding that tension does not negate what you have to say. It deepens what you have to say. You're just, in a sense, what it does is it just hedges certainty. It heads the ego off at the pass and says, here's my best ideas, here's the conviction I have behind them, and and I'm just a little speck of toot floating in the galaxy. I am insignificant, and so I'm not going to pretend like I'm coming from a place that is firmer than it is, more solid than it is. It's amazing how I remember quite frequently when I was in ayahuasca ceremonies. I participated in a group from Brazil, and there was the ceremonies were held in a way where you were in these like dancing lines. It was called the Santo Daime, and you would stand through the duration of the service, often dancing, and it was very beautiful. But also, I was coming from ayahuasca ceremonies in South America where you were laying on a mat for the night, and this is like a totally different kind of setting. And I remember how difficult it was for me to figure out how to stand and be like coherent for the duration of these ceremonies. And I had this, very powerful insight that there was voices in me that were like, you can't do this, this is too hard, I blah blah blah. And all the sort of fatigued, stressed, doubtful, worried, tired voices that would come up. I noticed sometimes this happens at the gym too, to be totally honest, like during cardio or something. It's like, oh, I can't do this. And I remember that there was just this little like teacherly voice that I thank the plant medicine for, and it came in and it just said, stay very close to those voices. Don't try to get them to go away. Don't try to dominate them. Actually, if you just allow them to speak, don't judge them, just let them speak. Their uncertainties are a kind of firmness, and you'll find that if you just allow them to be there, that those uncertainties and doubts about your ability to like stand here in this space while on this very powerful entheogen will actually provide you for with firmness. And I was like, just blown away by that. And so it's true. Like anytime that from that point forward, after I had that little insight, that I would hear those voices like, you can't stand this whole time. You can't sing and dance this whole time. You need to be barfing on the floor, laying down or something. It's funny because I would just kind of hear those voices. I would hear them and just let them grow stronger and more fanatical in my head. And I wouldn't try to prohibit them at all. And those doubts became like a kind of fiber. It's like the branch of a little sapling, like getting strong or thick in the middle. Amazing. So it's very important that when we judge or we're being asked to judge something, to make to have a discernment, or to be discriminating, or to offer advice, whether it's solicited or God, I don't like unsolicited advice, but let's just say you find yourself in the position of offering some advice, maybe to your kids or something. Can it come from a space within you where you can almost hear?
Yo,
I don't know more than anyone else.
That was a big green burrito. What's up? Welcome.
My thoughts are not more significant than anything else. And in fact, there might be many other more significant, accurate, appropriate things to say.
Stash, what's up?
Saturn is
what is up, my friends?
Remember that space of insignificance. And when listening, gosh, if you can listen with insignificance in mind, that's really powerful. Then you can, when you're listening, you can, oh, that's interesting that voice came up. There's this sound, there's that feeling, and I'm not going to grant any greater significance to anything. And in that sense, it's not that nothing is
these lives. Come on, man. Don't tease me like that, AI.
To be a phenomenon.
Don't fucking
itself.
do that to me, AI.
Being
Come on, bro.
That is very, very important. So anyway, these are 3 things.
Very cool. No way. That sucks,
Number
dude.
2, dying Saturn has to say.
Really? What's temperatures in Florida, man?
In mind. What does that mean?
Dude, in Ottawa, it's
here's how we keep eternity in mind. Number 1, this has meaning around me, no more or less than anything else. It's a great practice to be in.
That sucks, man. I'm sorry.
And again, this goes back to something like
60. What is that in friggin' Celsius?
A different way of thinking about insignificance is to think about eternity, which is just a different way of framing things.
15.
Really. In the scope of eternity, if you think nothing has
it's
an
pretty
ultimate
cold.
beginning,
End of
nothing
February.
has an ultimate end, everything has always been. There is ultimately nothing.
Looks like it's gonna get warmer though.
Whatsoever in the grand scheme of things. There are temporary experiences that are heavenly and hellish. Movement persists, change, dynamism persists, creativity persists, participation persists. Everything is sacred, everything is meaningful, everything is included.
Not nice.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm still using my heater that I bought in Miami.
Which I know is not like
in January.
If you went around like that, it could give you room to think.
I used it last night.
Citizen of Earth, participating in stories and living life and relating. But you don't want to hold it that intensely, like you become some sort of white-knuckled, eternity boss lord. You know what I mean? But if you can look around and just sometimes just repeat, this is meaningful, but no more or less than anything else. And then the next thing that comes up and shows itself of significance, this is meaningful, no more or less than anything else. And the reason that we do that is to remember that in eternity, everything is teeming with meaning. So another way of talking about insignificance, rather, because some people may not like that word, they may feel that it threatens their significance, right? Another way of framing it, if that triggers you, is to think about eternity. This has meaning, no more or less. This is sacred, no more or less than anything else. This is included, no more or less than anything else. Those are not easy things to do. They may not be appropriate things to say to yourself or to speak out loud to someone else all of the time. But keeping some kind of
be a menace
loose
to South
cord
Central while
connection
drinking
to
your
these
juice
ideas,
in the
which are
hood.
reflections of the reality of eternity.
I don't remember that line.
What do you do with eternity? Nothing, because it's teeming with things to do, with things that have been done, with things that are meaningful, with things that are sacred. Nothing is excluded. So keeping those things in mind is such a good thing to do when Saturn is dying, because we're crossing over some kind of threshold and we're tempted to think, oh my God, I'm really losing something, right? And it's like, well, how do I mourn or grieve or let go while also keeping eternity in mind? How do I mourn or grieve or let go of something that has been significant while keeping insignificance in mind? These are not easy things to do. These are some of the hardest things to do, which is why Saturn is often talked about as so hard. Anyway,
Pretty good answer.
so
It's
another
pretty.
way of
It's good. It
framing
sounds
some
like
of the
him.
same things that we just said about insignificance come from just thinking about keeping eternity in
Steve
mind, if you
Chappelle.
prefer that to insignificance. And number 3 is stay close to questions that don't have answers. I love Mary Oliver. My wife loves Mary Oliver. She's a poet. She once said, she was interviewed, and Ashley was telling me about this, so I'm just regurgitating what Ashley told me that she was listening to on like a podcast with Mary Oliver, or she was interviewed at one point. Anyway, she said, you know, the commentator was saying, like the interviewer was saying, I read your poems and you bring me to these places where you ask these questions. I just have no answers for them, and I find that those are some of my favorite places in your poetry. She goes, good, good. She said, every day we are used to, and I'm just paraphrasing Ashley's paraphrase. I know that Mary Oliver said something like this. I had to read a boatload of her in grad school in my creative writing program, and Ashley and I read her almost every morning. So she said, every day we're used to dealing mostly with questions that have answers, like mundane problems that have to be solved. So they're questions and answers that we deal with. We don't realize what vast treasure is available to us in the daily problems or questions that come up, and the answers or solutions that we have to find by means of keeping in touch with questions that don't have answers or that we cannot find the answer to. So you got to figure out what to do because the dog's got an upset stomach. You got to figure out what to do because your kid's home from school sick and you have to work, and what do? There's lots of stuff that comes up in everyday life. A lot of what we deal in quite regularly as, you know, we sleep like a third of our lives, right? So if you think about the amount of mundane time that you spend doing dishes, doing laundry, cleaning up, showering, brushing your teeth, sleeping, a lot of life is spent doing pretty mundane things, and a lot of daily life is spent looking at very mundane issues and solutions to those issues. And you know, it's life. It's fun. It's part of life. I think what Mary Oliver is saying is there's more available to us in the daily mundane events of life if we have something that allows us to see the mundane for more than just the mundane. And one of the things that does that are questions that don't have easy answers. Questions that go so deep that we just go, yeah, I don't know. Where is my dog? Where did she go? I don't know, man. I don't know. I have faith. I believe in God. I believe in divinity. I believe in my dog's soul, you know, but I don't know where she is. That's the honest truth. And I really appreciate, one of the things I love about my wife more than I could possibly explain is that she is someone, since I met her, that I can sit down with at night on the couch after the kids are in bed, and she will go, where is Rhea? And I go, I don't know. And we'll just sit there, sometimes 5-10 minutes. We'll just sit there with a big question. She loves doing that. I've always loved doing that. I love friends that do that. I love people that do that, because it's so obnoxious to me personally. This is just me being sort of honest. It's so obnoxious being around people that always have to have a flippant answer for everything. You know, that always know something. I like not knowing things. I like not knowing things because there's something satisfying about it. There's something beautiful about it. And so, that being said, I do like having people around that know where to go and what to do. It's good to have answers too, you know, but yeah, it's like Mary Oliver saying, like, stay close to eternity is a similar way of saying, when you stay close to questions like, where is my dog that died? Rather than being like, well, she's in the Akashic record floating around with Deepak Chopra, and I'm absolutely sure of it because I've got 17 crystals on my altar. You know? I know because I took Course in Miracles. You know, it's like, I don't know where she is. I don't know. There's so many big questions. We can find a big question or two a week that just opens our hearts, opens our minds, creates that expansiveness, and we feel like we're staring out, you know, like one of those one of those science fiction movies where they open the hatch and the person's just like floating out in space. Stay close to questions that don't have answers. Stay close to questions that don't have answers. When you do that, how can you do that? Number one, keep in mind when making claims or statements, right, that there are many questions out there that you don't have answers to, many problems that can't be solved. Because at the very least, what that does is it keeps us somewhat humble when we're faced with questions and everyday problems. We might be able to, like there's sometimes when, my daughter comes home and she'll go, this person did this and blah, 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 why? And I'll just go, man, that's really hard. I just don't know why people do that sometimes. And I'll see it and I swear to God, it doesn't work all the time, right? But once in a while on my daughter's face, we'll just go, the problem will leave and she'll be like, infinity? Sometimes that's really relieving. I have to keep that in mind when I'm facing problems about the groceries. Well, shit, infinity. So keep in mind when making claims or statements that there are so many problems that don't need or have solutions, so many questions that don't need or have answers. That too exists. The threshold of a dying Saturn brings us close to spaces that don't need answering, that there's insignificance, there's eternity, there's questions that don't have answers that just take us out the hatch, floating into a kind of space. It's not going to be there forever. Don't freak out. 2, be excited by the process of discovery. One of the things that staying close to questions that don't have answers does for us is to say, I don't know. I have no idea. But I bet you if we just keep pulling the thread, we'll find out. A lot of the times, it's not that questions never have answers, it's that they don't have one right now. Dying Saturn is really good at saying, look, when you're faced with insignificance, when you're faced with a threshold, when you're faced with death, uncertainty, letting go, releasing, you don't know what comes next, don't force it. Let your questions and problems be things that right now don't have answers or solutions. And be excited, because maybe if you stay curious, you'll find something. Care more about souls than about being right. If you care more about the living things around you, including yourself, and tending to them with care and devotion and tenderness, embodied tenderness, you can't go wrong. It's like a cheat code. Ashley says, care for the living things first. If we have stuff that comes up and we don't have an answer, we don't have a solution, we feel like we're in some kind of purgatory, some space of unknowing or uncertainty, deterioration, death, crossing over a threshold, we don't know what comes next. We're faced with a lot of questions. We don't have answers to them. In that moment, care more about loving than about knowing. And that's a good guideline for us, all the time, right? Before you go and tell someone what they ought to think or feel, what news events ought to be the most important to them right now, or what platform is the most virtuous, or whatever. It's can you keep in mind that there is insignificance, eternity abounds, questions that don't have answers are living and moving all around us, like clouds moving in the sky. And I can just care more about souls than about being right or knowing or answering. Right? These are the kinds of things that old dying Saturn, think of Saturn, Saturn is a boundary and a limit, structure, and blah, blah, blah. Saturn is also a very mystical planet that takes us out of knowing to unknowing, that takes us out of certainty to uncertainty, that takes us out of significance to insignificance, that takes us out of time and into eternity. Keep those things in mind. They're actually here to help. So I hope that this little sermon from the stars today was useful for you and inspiring of your own thoughts and your own ideas, because I don't know shit, Just reporting on what I've heard about Saturn. All right, that's what I've got for today. I hope you guys have a good one, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Hey everyone, this is Adam Ellenboss from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at the upcoming conjunction between the Sun and Saturn in the sign of Pisces. You may not know this, but in terms of the synodic cycles that the Sun goes through with other planets, when the Sun or another planet that moves faster than the Sun comes into the conjunction together with the Sun, it's considered a moment of death for that planet as well as rebirth. And so right now we have something like an old Saturn that is dying and ready to be reborn. And that has some very specific meanings. And so we're going to talk about what those meanings and themes are. And then I'm going to run through a quick breakdown of the whole sign horoscopes you can listen to for sun or rising sign as a way of understanding which house topics and themes are getting activated through this moment of Saturnian death and rebirth. So that is our agenda for today. Please caress. That was a good one. Someone left caress the like button. Someone had tap dance on the like button. I'm really enjoying really enjoying what you guys are coming up with. Smash it, hit it, tap it, love it. What is another one? Gently depress. Anyway, appreciate you guys liking and subscribing as always. You can find a transcript of today's talk on the website, nightlightastrology.com. I want to take you over there right now because my next monthly webinar for the month of March is on sale. You can register and join us. And hold on, let me just get it up. I don't know where. Here we go. All right, so if you go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the live events tab or go up to the events page and click live events. Scroll down and you'll see that on March 14th, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, my next monthly webinar that I'm doing, a new monthly webinar each month, doing something a little bit different. The first three are on the outer planets in love. So this month of March, we're going to be talking about Neptune in love, both in the birth chart and by transits of Neptune to the birth chart. How does Neptune show up in love, intimacy, sexuality? What lessons or teachings does it have? What are the pitfalls you have to be aware of? So hope to see you guys there. It's $20 to register. If you cannot, we get a live link to the webinar, but if you can't attend live, we send you a download link so that you can receive the talk and watch it on your own time on your own device. So hope to see some of you there. I'll be promoting that more as the time gets closer to the webinar in March. And let's turn our attention to the Sun and Saturn. So here's what's going on in the sky. This is Wednesday, February 21st. And you'll see that the Sun and Saturn are coming together. Now, the Sun moves faster than Saturn and superior planet, which means that its orbit is out beyond from the Chaldean order perspective of ancient astrology, the Sun sits in the middle by speed. And as we see it move through the zodiac, Saturn is slower than the Sun in that Chaldean order. So the Sun approaches Saturn to conjoin in the synodic cycle. Some planets like Venus, for example, will conjoin the Sun because Venus moves quicker than the Sun. But either way, when the two planets get together, any in their synodic cycle with the Sun, it's a moment of dying and being reborn. So as the Sun approaches Saturn, let's speed this up a little bit. You can see that their conjunction, I'm going to circle this a little bit more broadly here. Their conjunction, which Mercury will also participate in through its cazimi, comes around about February 28th. You could stretch it out a little bit to the 29th, February 28th and 29th. Now that is next week. So you might be saying, well, that's a little bit, we're getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we? But no, because by the time that these two planets come to be in the same sign, which is really Monday of this week, right? Now we're on Wednesday, February 21st, and we're under that 8-degree range, which is the combustion range. So this is where Saturn is an old Saturn that's burning up, ready to pass. That can mean so many different things metaphorically. And as this conjunction comes through, of course, Mercury will be dying and being reborn as well. We talked a little bit about the of Mercury situation yesterday, so today we're going to talk about Saturn. Now, as these two planets come together, we want to watch for a variety of themes. Here is what I think you will notice. Number one, the old, the expiring, and the outworn. Now remember, we're going to take these through your 12 whole sign horoscopes and give you some brief keywords to think about today. But these are the things you could watch for given the topics we're going to cover in the horoscopes we're about to do. So I want to cover this first so you can just take the topics and apply them. So you're going to watch for that which is old, expiring, and outworn, just making itself it's obviously known. This isn't working. This is old. This is expiring. This is not, this is not working anymore. So just that simple theme of something old that's dying. That's an old Saturn that's combust the sun, about to experience rebirth. Moving across the threshold, Saturn was the god of boundaries and limitations, but also was seen not so much as the limiter, but the signification of what sits between things. So, like a wall or a boundary. Now, people take that to mean that Saturn is inherently all about grounding and boundaries and structures, and kind of. The other thing you have to remember is that a boundary is, for Saturn, also a gateway. It's a threshold between something on one side and something on the other side. So when you think of Saturn, you often think about thresholds and gateways and boundaries between things that are both entailed in the significations of Saturn. So this is why Saturn also rules the opposition and connects opposites in astrology through tensions and relaxings of tensions and so forth. So moving across the threshold, an old dying Saturn being reborn means that we are moving, the sun is quite literally passing through the gateway of Saturn in a sense. And that gateway could take us from something old to something new, or something new to something that's more traditional, or something that we were trying that we're just going to go back to something old. But any kind of dichotomy between one thing and another thing, and the threshold between them, is something to think about. We're crossing over a boundary or threshold. Number 3 would be deterioration, grief, releasing, and surrendering. Saturn is melancholic. Saturn in double-bodied water sign is transitional and emotional. And so some kind of transition that involves releasing, surrendering, and a process probably of deterioration, letting go. Maybe that also involves grief, especially with the signature of water involved in the sign of Pisces. Number 4 would be a serious situation that must be addressed. Saturn is gravitas. Saturn is weightiness. It's consequential. It's heavy. It's mature. So there might be something serious that's coming up, that it's the sun meeting Saturn says, now this must be understood, this must be addressed, this must be looked at. And number 5, the need to mature, grow, or face consequences from previous cycles of activity. So we have a kind of moment of maturation. Saturn is the exaltation ruler of Libra, the moment of harvest. This is why we sort of whimsically say that Saturn rules karma. It doesn't. Karma is not ruled by a planet. Planets are expressions of karma. Make sure to remember that. But the most important thing here is just that Saturn can bring a more weighty sense of karmic consequence, something that has history behind it, like getting a PhD because you put in hard work, for example, or getting cancer because you've smoked for 50 years or something. You know what I'm saying? So so the need to mature, grow, or face consequences. These are the kinds of themes to watch for. Now let us take a look at the whole sign houses involved, and we'll see what we can do to understand where things are heading. I'm going to actually change my point of view here for a second to make it just a little clearer and simpler to see. All right. So we're going by whole signs, and we're going to start with Aries. So first of all, we look and we see that if you're in Aries, the conjunction is in the 12th house. So for Aries, this is a very unconscious space. It's a blind spot. It's something that you don't see as easily. And so that could be people, places, things, energies that are undermining you that you have to face. Some kind of threshold or situation that is coming to a head that requires you to mature, face consequences, deal more seriously with something, look more carefully at something, understand something that's been hidden or blind to you. And that could be coming from within yourself or something around you. It can also suggest a moment of deeper emotional or spiritual healing, release, surrender, and probably something that has a bit of an unconscious history in you. Those are the things to watch for Aries that come to my mind right away. And I'm just kind of reaching for the low-hanging fruit here just to stimulate our understanding. So if you're a Taurus, if you're looking Taurus sun or rising, then this falls into your 11th house, which is the place of friends and allies, benefactors and colleagues. And so we're looking at a transition around who you work with or how you work with the people that you work, the organization or infrastructure of various places and or institutions and organizations that you belong to, the people, the colleagues, the friends, the networks. And there's something passing away. There's a threshold that's being crossed, a serious situation that's being addressed. The death and rebirth of Saturn in the 11th brings a more consequential feeling around friends, groups, allies, and things like that, and also maybe addressing the long-term future of your dreams, hopes, and wishes, which are also connected to the 11th house. So that's for Taurus. For Gemini, it's squarely in the career house, so we are talking about the theme of death, birth, transition, thresholds, the old, outworn, or expiring, the releasing and surrendering, the serious situation that must be addressed, the need to mature or grow, all within the workplace or within the context of power and responsibility in the workplace, action and duty in the workplace. And so this is some kind of, significant transformation that's happening in that career house for Gemini. Is pretty straightforward. Now, if you're not working, this would be your activities that link you to the world, that take you out of your house, so to speak. Anything like that, anything that involves you in the world, in action. So if you're retired, it would be what kind of activities do you have, and how are they changing? All right. So if you are a Cancer, then we place this into the ninth house, the place of beliefs, of the higher mind, education, learning, professors, sages, gurus, mystical experience, spirituality. This is your moral and spiritual compass, your beliefs and the direction that they're heading in. Some kind of change happening around teachers, learning, education, philosophy, beliefs, the direction of your life vis-a-vis your beliefs. Well, something here is old, outworn, expiring, moving across a threshold, releasing or surrendering, deepening, becoming more mature, and or maybe there's something serious that's happening that has to be addressed in this realm. That's the ninth house realm for Cancers. All right, we're doing this just briefly to give you guys some way of looking in on this. For Leos, this is the eighth house. Now, this is your house. I sometimes call it the blood bank house. It's where you donate to others, they donate to you. You owe others, they owe you. You receive blessings from others, they receive from you. So the area of your life that's going through this kind of Saturnian death and rebirth, this reset, is the place of um, reciprocal karmic contracts. Not that you can be aware consciously of all of them or even why they are the way that they are, but nonetheless, debts, um, blessings, payments, exchanges, these are the kinds of things to think about in the eighth house. So you're looking at old, outworn, expiring contracts with other people, moving across a threshold within the give and take of karmic contracts with other people, deterioration, grief, release, and surrendering as things that have been are now being released. That exchanges or relationships have to be released that have had a kind of karmic give and take. A serious situation that has to be addressed, that has consequence behind it from the past, that requires a need to grow, mature emotionally, spiritually. There's a heavier placement for Leos for sure. We go forward to Virgos, and now we're looking at the relationship house. If you're a Virgo, this is all about the old and expiring and outworn within relationships, love, sexuality. You're moving across a threshold here. There is a sense of grief releasing, surrendering, deteriorating, something that more serious that needs to be addressed. The need to mature, grow, or face consequences from the past. And all of this can mean that there is a deepening happening in your relationships, but it comes through this kind of death and rebirth of Saturn, the planet of gravitas, and a planet that really gives us perspective if we're willing to look at the difficult things that Saturn brings up. That's coming through the area of relationships, a more consequential moment for Virgos. All right, well, we move into Libra territory, and this pushes the Sun and Saturn into the sixth house, a place of sacrifice, a place of hard work and labor toward things that we value. You throw a bit of your blood, sweat, and tears into the sacrificial flames of the sixth house. And with that hard work, it yields results, but often in time and often slowly and not in proportion to the work that has to go in. It's a bit like the idea of apprenticeship. Apprenticeship doesn't pay off often for quite a while. You got to put a lot of time in. There's work and service and suffering and sacrifice and passion and struggling through adversity and challenges and overcoming them that are all part of the sixth house. So, a place of adversity and frustrations and perseverance, as well as sacrifice and service to something that you think is worth sacrificing for. And this is a more serious moment where the themes of sacrifice, labor, work, frustrations, perseverance are coming up. And this could also be a moment that helps you move across a threshold, grow as you release and surrender something that's old or outworn or expiring. It's a more serious moment of consequence and sacrifice. So that's for Libras. Now we move forward and we put Scorpio on the ascendant, which places the Sun and Saturn into the fifth house. So the fifth house is called the joy of Venus and the place of good fortune, a place that's associated with everything pleasing, romantic, sensual, exciting, joyful, creatively satisfying. It's also associated with children and pregnancy, things that in time reward us and make us feel happy and make us feel like we are creatively birthing things into the world that are somehow joyful and happy. So, this house, there's a creative reset happening. There's something old, outworn, expiring. You're moving across a threshold when it comes to joy, creativity, the topics of children and pregnancy. There may be themes of release or surrendering, a more serious or consequential situation that needs to be addressed, the need to mature, grow, or face consequences, but all with respect to some kind of transition around your happiness, your joy, your creativity, or things like children, romance, and love. These are all fifth house topics as well. So the deeper question being about joy and happiness and the need to grow in relation to your level of creative fulfillment in life. The Scorpio brings serious themes into a house that's really a beautiful, creatively uplifting house, but got to look at things there this month if you're Scorpio. So, Sagittarians, this places the connection of Saturn and the Sun in Pisces, excuse me, into the fourth house, the place of roots, home, family, living environment, parents, ancestry, uh, things like heredity and DNA and mom and dad and the living environment that you live in, the property that you live on. So here we see that there are themes of greater seriousness that have to be addressed around home, family, or living environment, the karmic or ancestral past with respect to your upbringing. You're moving across some kind of threshold with respect to home, family, or living environment. There's a theme of things that are old or outworn or expiring that need resetting around home or family or living environment. There's themes perhaps of releasing or surrendering and heavier or more serious consequences from the past that have to be looked at, released, moved through. Let's move ahead. Capricorn on the ascendant places the Sun and Saturn into the third house, a place that is called the joy of the moon, Dia or goddess, and has to do with the environment around us. You can think of this as the house of culture, like the ecology of your life, your neighborhood, the kind of the I've used this so many times, but it's like if you're a fish, this is the description of the aquarium that you live in. It's all around you. It's not exactly the same as the little rock you live under, which is your home as a goldfish, let's say, in the tank, but it's the rest of the tank around you that you swim in every day. And so this place is also associated with mind, mood, environment, people that are important in the environment, the way you make your way in and around and through the environment, the kind of feedback the environment gives you, how it influences you, how you influence it, what kinds of connections you have through culture, all of which are very important. They connect you to things like siblings, neighbors, aunts and uncles, people that live sort of in proximity around the home, connected maybe through environment or through family. So they're here in this place of mind, mood, emotion, environment. There is information coming to you about things that are old, that aren't working, that are dying. That there is a need to release or surrender various features or facets of the environment, or to shift mind, mood, or emotions in relation to the environment. There is a need to mature, grow, or face consequences, again, within the everyday environment and the flow of communication within it. It's a little bit more nebulous. Honestly, the third house is always that way, but you're going to watch for subtle changes happening in and through the environment around you that, if addressed seriously and maturely, can have a big impact on your everyday life and health and well being. All right, for Aquarius, we have the Sun Saturn conjunction in the second house. That is the place of assets and resources and the cultivation and development of skills, assets, and resources, both energy, skills, abilities, money, and any one or anything that you lean on for a form of support. Here we see that there are things that are old and expiring and outworn that are ready to be reset somehow. You're moving across a threshold with respect to what you have, what you possess, what you own, what you're trying to cultivate or develop as a matter of something you have or are in possession of personally or financially. There's something to be released or surrendered, a consequential situation that has to be addressed, the need to mature, grow, or face consequences around time, energy, money, assets, income, expenditures, things like that. Finally, Pisces rising. Pisces rising places the Sun Saturn in the first house. So we have this in the place of health, vitality, body, appearance, psychology, personality, character. You, as a Pisces, are ready to let go of things within you that are not working, that are expiring or outworn, maybe aspects of your lifestyle, your health, your self care regimens. This might have to do with an old you that's ready to be released and a new you that's ready to be born. This is a serious existential moment for you to be thinking about who you are, what is or isn't right or real for you, what your no's and yeses are. The need to mature or grow or change is more consequential right now and very personal for you as a Pisces. So that takes us through just a little quick jaunt through the signs to give you some sense of how these death and rebirth themes with Saturn might play out given the topics of the house they fall in. Most accurate will be your rising signs that correlates with the whole sign version of your birth chart. But you can always listen to your sun sign as well if you like sun sign horoscopes. So that's an option. It ought to be interesting to note that Mercury will be paired with this, which brings even more weightiness to everything we've said. But if you want to hear a little bit more about Mercury's involvement, listen to yesterday's video where I break down Mercury's journey through this entire process in greater depth and detail. Okay, that is it for today. Don't forget to pop over to the website to sign up for Neptune in Love, which is our mid-March webinar that I'll be doing. If you want to check that out, those are beginner friendly. They're also specific enough that advanced students may get something really nice out of them. So I hope you guys will enjoy that. After the Pluto webinar I thought that went very well. I was really glad to see people and hope to see you guys next month for Neptune. All right, that's it for today. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rux, I'm a Western Tropical Astrologer, and today we are going to be talking about the astrology of the full moon in Virgo. This is coming up on the 24th of February at 12:30 GMT time, and it is happening at 5 degrees 23 minutes of Virgo. So if you have in your natal chart planets, angles, important points around 4 to 6 degrees of mutable signs, you are going to feel this full moon the most, folks. Also, those of you who have planets or angles around 4 to 6 degrees of Cancer, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Taurus, you're probably going to really like this full moon because it's going to make a harmonious aspect. It's going to form a harmonious aspect with those particular elements of your natal chart, of your astrological birth chart. Now, do remember, and maybe you're hearing this for the first time, that not every single astrological event is going to impact us or is going to speak to us. Why? Because the ones that speak to us directly, that activate our lives directly, you could say, are the ones that form an aspect with our natal chart, with certain planets, certain angles, certain points in our natal charts. If we were to feel everything, we would probably be overwhelmed, cosmically speaking. So I know that there are people who are watching this and thinking, this is happening, but this is not happening to me, this is happening in the sky, this doesn't relate to me. Why? Well, I have just explained why. And I also want to flag, again, maybe it goes without saying, that this is a general forecast. And in order to get an accurate, in-depth, granular forecast that is tailored to you, that is personalized, folks, you have to work with the entire natal chart, you have to work with your entire birth chart, and that is done when you work with an astrologer, when you consult an astrologer. Of course, if you're a student of astrology, you can obviously do that yourselves. But just in case people are wondering, why isn't everything about me? Why isn't everything speaking to me? Why isn't every single general forecast about my life? That is the reason why, because a personalized forecast takes into account your entire natal chart, your entire birth chart. When I do these types of general horoscopes, these types of general updates, I do them based off of the ascendant, based off of your rising sign. And of course, your natal chart, the blueprint of the sky at the time when you were born, is much more complex than that. It contains planets, significant points, angles, many houses. So do keep this in mind, folks. And again, remember, you're only going to feel the most the astrological events that activate by aspect your natal chart. Now, if you want to work with me, you can find me on my website, which is writteninthestars-astrology.com. That is writteninthestars-astrology.com. I work with clients on a day-to-day basis. I work with clients full-time. I'm a full-time consulting astrologer. So if you want to book a personal reading with me, once again, my website is writteninthestars-astrology.com, and you can go straight to the services section. And in the services section, you're going to see that if you're a first-time client, the option to go for is the 1 hour 15 minutes Zoom consultation. And if you're an existing client, you've got two additional options, the year ahead forecast, which is 1 hour long, and the 30 minutes follow-up consultation. If you're a new client and you would like us to only focus on your forecast, I still recommend going for the 1 hour 15 minute Zoom consultation, because that is the one to opt for if you haven't worked with me in the past. And in the 1 hour 15 minutes, we can cover whatever topic, whatever life sector, whatever burning questions you might have. For example, we can analyze the year ahead so that you can prepare for the upcoming themes, so that you can make the most of upcoming opportunities, so that you can maybe be prepared for potential challenges. We can also look at specific life sectors such as career, relationships, and how you can make the most of the cards that you have been dealt, so to speak. We can also look at astrological relocation, astrocartography, if you're looking to relocate, if you're looking to travel to certain places. How does your personal astrology align with that? So the 1 hour 15 minute Zoom consultation is completely customizable to whatever is of interest to you right now. If you haven't had your natal chart analyzed by an astrologer before, if you haven't had your natal chart interpreted before, I do recommend, however, starting off with that, because everything in astrology starts with the natal chart. We call the natal chart the root prediction. It is, think of it as the, of course, the map of the sky at the time when you were born, and a representation, a symbolic representation of the main themes and the main storylines that you're likely to deal with in this life. And the more you know, the better informed you are, the better choices you can make in life, if you ask me. If you're wondering how much time you need to wait in order to get a reading booked in the calendar with me, at the moment when I'm filming this, I am taking bookings for the second half of March. I mean, I would say more like the last kind of like a week of March, and for the beginning of April. Generally, the waiting time is between like a month to a month and a half, just in case that is something that you have been wondering about. I have left the link to my website in the description box of the video, and also in the pinned comments in case you cannot find the description box. Now, going back to the full moon in Virgo. So 24th of February, you might also feel it in the 3 days before and the 3 days after. A full moon is a time of completion, culmination, of outcomes, of results. Things are visible to us at the time of the full moon. We reap what we have sown, you could say. So we can see the fruits of our labor, we can see the results of our actions, we can see the results of any sort of like work that we've been doing in a specific life sector, anything that we've been putting energy towards, especially for the past 6 months. Because this is a full moon, I do recommend looking back at what you were focusing on, what was going on in your life at the time of the new moon in Virgo last year in September. This was happening on the 14th of September, so maybe have a think about what was going on around that time, 14th of September, maybe also in the few days before and the few days after, because we are likely to see some sort of a culmination, some sort of a, also of a correlation between events and themes that you were dealing with at the time. So last year in September, you might find that things are coming full circle at the time of this full moon at the end of February, 24th of February. What do I like about this full moon? So let's talk a little bit about aspects. We're going to talk about themes, and also, of course, we're going to go into the updates for each of the 12 zodiac signs. I like the fact that the full moon is making a harmonious aspect to Jupiter in Taurus. So there is a sense of things indeed coming to a close, coming to a culminating point that maybe is giving us reasons to be hopeful, to believe in, I was about to say, the goodness that is resulting from whatever outcomes we are being faced with at the time of this astrological event. There is a sense of positivity and optimism in the air. There is a sense of looking at the glass half full rather than the glass half empty. There is a feeling of kind of like better days, better times coming, maybe more stable times, more reliable, more steady times coming up, especially when it comes to our material security and stability. Maybe there is a sense of things becoming a little bit more stable and steady and grounded in the 3D reality, in the material space and in the economic space. However, the moon at the time of the full moon is going to be opposing Saturn. What is that telling me? It is telling me that something is coming to a close. It is telling me that something is coming to an end. It is telling me that something is in need of restructuring. It is telling me that something is in need of a reorganization. It is telling me that something is shrinking, contracting, coming to a close in a sense that existing structures and systems are no longer viable. They are no longer working. Saturn likes to shrink and to diminish things. Jupiter likes to expand things. Because we've got both Jupiter and Saturn involved with this full moon, I see a contraction that is most likely going to lead to steady expansion in the future. It also feels like something is ending in order for something else to grow at the time of this full moon. Now, what are some of the themes that we might be dealing with collectively? We are likely to see some sort of old routine, job, or even habit come to an end. Remember that the full moon is in Virgo, and Virgo is the sign of work, service, functionality, routines, habits, health. So an old job, an old work-related project might come to an end, but also something in our lives connected with our health might come to an end. In order for us to achieve greater stability, and in order for us to achieve steady growth in the future. Is there a sense of maybe a little bit of sadness, potentially, because something is coming to an end, because maybe we're saying goodbye to something? Yes, it is possible. Is it likely to be beneficial? Yes, very, 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 very possible. but not necessarily, how should I put it? Not necessarily immediately. We might see the beneficial results if we have a little bit of patience. If we give it a little bit of time, I'd say. Now, at the time of the full moon, an axis of signs is generally activated. So in this case, we're talking about the Virgo-Pisces axis. So collectively, we may hear news connected with the healthcare system. We may hear news connected with health in general, physical and emotional health. We might hear news connected with healing, services in general, news connected with administrative and logistical systems. Virgo is also connected with bureaucracy in general. It is connected with administration and bureaucracy, and some things might be coming to a close. They might be coming to an end in this regards. Virgo is also from a symbolic perspective, it is associated with the problem solver. And Virgo is the sign that fixes things, that repairs things. Now, something that used to work in the past in terms of problem solving, in terms of solutions, in terms of practical solutions, might no longer be viable. This full moon also puts the spotlight on the topic of cleaning things up. Of cleaning up some sort of mess, I wanna say, of bringing some sort of order to chaos. Are we also likely to hear news connected with drugs around this time? Yes, and I would not be surprised if some drugs were taken off the market, or if some drugs were deemed, I don't know, not necessarily very healthy. It does feel like something is probably going to come to a close. It's going to come to an end when it comes to the pharmaceutical or the healthcare industries, or a combination of both. The spotlight might also be placed on mental health, and especially how certain habits negatively impact mental health, and we might become aware of why it is necessary to let go of these habits, even though maybe in the past we thought, oh, this is good, this is nice, this is supportive, this is helping me. We might realize that this is not actually supporting our health, physical or mental, or maybe even emotional. What else can we expect at the time of this full moon? The completion of projects that required a combination of imagination and attention to details. The completion of also something that required cleaning, purifying, metaphorically sorting out the wheat from the chaff, organizing, efficiency, analysis, and some form of triage. So that might be brought to a close. That might be brought to an end. We are seeing a little bit of a face-off between Virgo's utilitarian, efficient, crafty, perfectionist, discerning approach, and Pisces, tolerant, empathetic, fluid, innocent, even naive, and dreamy nature at times. It feels like something connected with these sort of like Piscean topics is probably going to curb, or maybe we shouldn't call them topics, maybe we should call them Piscean themes, or the Piscean symbolism. Something connected with the Piscean symbolism is probably going to curb some of that Virgo efficiency, and some of that discerning, efficient, effective approach, analytical approach that Virgo brings to the table. Why? Because it no longer seems to be working. That is what I'm seeing at a collective level. Now, on a personal level, we are going to go through the updates for each of the 12 zodiac signs, and of course, if you're listening to this, you might know what I'm going to say. please listen to the update for your rising sign. Please listen to the update for your ascendant. Why? Because that is the closest thing that you can get to a personal reading. Of course, in a personal reading, we take into account your entire natal chart, and we also use other forecasting techniques as astrologers, such as annual perfections, the Firdaria, solar arc directions, secondary progressions. But going back to this general forecast, this general horoscope, please, please, please listen to the update for the rising sign, because you are likely to relate to that one the most. If you don't know your rising sign, by the way, it's quite easy to find out if you have your time of birth. You just Google online natal chart generator and you put in your date, time, and place of birth, and you're gonna find out your rising sign. But if you don't know your rising sign, and if you cannot find it out, then I recommend listening to the update for your sun sign. Some people ask me if they should listen to the update for the moon. I say not necessarily. I don't really see these types of forecasts working well with the moon sign, but each to their own, if that is the saying. I think that is the saying. My lovely Aries. Let's start, of course, with the one, the only, number one, Aries. Aries suns and Aries risings. Especially Aries risings. This full moon on the 24th of February, active 3 days before, 3 days after, is activating your axis of health and service. So, my lovely Aries, I believe you need to bring to a close one of the following. A job, a work-related project, or an existing approach to your health, or a combination of the aforementioned. Some of you could be wrapping up your existing, let's say, work. You might be saying goodbye to your existing job. Now, if you are saying goodbye to your existing job, I do want to flag that this full moon is very nicely aspected to Jupiter in your house of income. And it is probably because there's something else, there's something better, there's something that you're very much looking forward to job-wise on the horizon. And as a result, you have to break it out to your colleagues, to your team, your boss, and let them know, listen, I am packing up and going, thank you, sayonara. So I do see you getting out of this closure and completion job-wise better off financially. Now, if something is coming to an end work-wise and you're thinking, oh my god, no, I wasn't expecting this, I did not want this to happen, I wouldn't stress out too much, Aries, because you're probably going to find something, and probably even better paid, quite soon. Actually, really quick. And you might even benefit from taking a few days off. Now, health-wise, it feels like this full moon puts the spotlight on what you need to give up on, what you need to bring to a close in terms of habits, in terms of maybe even escapist tendencies, if you want your health to get better. There could be some sort of a result, a test result, for example, coming to your attention health-wise, and you realize, you know what, I maybe need to drink less, I don't know, less wine or something like that. It does feel like there's something that you need to cut down on. You might even need to cut down on how much work you're doing. And when I say work, I don't necessarily mean giving up on your job, but I mean maybe you should not overwork yourselves, Aries. You should not spend that much time doing overtime, for instance, and realize that you can do a very good job and you are appreciated and you are delivering great results even without killing yourselves, I'd say. Also, for some of you, Aries, a colleague or a team member might leave. If that feels stressful to start with, I wouldn't necessarily focus just on how much additional work you need to do because maybe they're leaving. I would also focus on maybe asking for a raise and seeing how you can benefit from the situation from a financial perspective, because I do actually see you being able to do that, Aries. And also, if you need to take a few days off, take a few days off around this time, because I feel like you're probably quite tired, just as an FYI. My dear Taurians, Taurus Suns, and Taurus Risings, full moon in Virgo, 24th of February, active 3 days before, 3 days after. Something is coming to a close, something is coming to a culminating point. I am thinking you are wrapping up some sort of a group project or a creative project that involved working with a community of people. It could be something that you really liked, that you were very invested in. It could be something that taught you a great deal. But at the same time, it does feel like it is the right thing to do because this existing project maybe is no longer aligned with your goals for the future, with your plans for the future. You could also be saying goodbye to maybe a community of people, a group of people, or even a circle of friends. Maybe a community of people that you used to work with. I apologize. I'm sometimes trying to say way too many things in one go, and the words just don't want to come out of my mouth. So you could be parting ways with a community that you have been working with. You could be saying, you know what, I'm gonna go down a different path, and that is completely up to you. It can be a good time to celebrate some sort of a result. Some sort of an outcome with your friends or with a community that you're a part of, but at the same time it does feel like there's a bittersweet element I want to say to this. For those of you who have kids, your child or your children could say goodbye to a team or to a colleague or to maybe their class in some shape or form. I don't know, maybe you're moving them to a different school or something like that. Again, quite bittersweet, I wanna say. This can also be a time, Taurians, however, in which you realize that if you want to work towards some of your long-term goals, there is a need to maybe adjust your habits, routines, and what you do on a day-to-day basis, and maybe even spend a little bit less time engaged in some of your old passions and hobbies. Why? Because you've got some bigger goals, bigger targets on the horizon. And of course, for some Taurians, this full moon could bring news of pregnancy. As a result, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, like I have to share this with my boss. I have to share this with the people that I'm working with. I have to break the news to them. It is possible. It can happen. Geminis, Gemini Suns, and Gemini Risings. Full moon in Virgo, 24th of February, active 3 days before, 3 days after. This is putting the spotlight on your home sector, but also on your public life and your career sector. Have a think about what was going on in your home and in your family life, Geminis, around the 14th of September last year of 2023. It does feel like something is coming to a close at home. Some sort of chapter is coming to a close at home. Maybe you've been working a great deal from home. Maybe you've been renovating. Maybe you have been remodeling. Maybe you have been also working hard to help a parent with something at home. Maybe they needed your support. Maybe they needed your help, and you stepped in and you jumped in and you took the responsibility upon you. But now it feels like this is probably going to come to an end. I do see a sense of relief with some sort of like work or let's say project that involved effort coming to a close at the time of this full moon. Some of you could be leaving a home around this time and saying goodbye to an existing living situation. You might also decide to maybe sell a home or essentially say goodbye to an existing setup, home-wise, family-wise, and living situation wise. Something could also be coming to a close and to a culminating point for one of your parents, my dear Virgos. For example, they might be selling their house, or they might be retiring, or they might be letting you know that they plan to give up on something, and in a way it can feel bittersweet. On the one hand, you might see how this kind of like benefits you and them because it's taking some sort of like worry off your shoulders. On the other hand, there could also be a feeling of like, oh no, I'm gonna miss this, and this felt very comfortable and very familiar, and so on. Also a significant expense connected with a home around this time. I do believe you've got the money, but I also how should I put it? I also believe that it is quite a hefty expense, so you do have to fork out quite a significant amount of money, my dear Geminis. Cancerians, Cancer Suns, and Cancer Risings. This full moon is activating on the 24th of February, and of course it's active 3 days before, 3 days after. It is activating your 3rd house, 9th house axis, so the axis of traveling, of learning, of studying, of communication, of education. Some of you could be handing in your exam, your thesis, some sort of exam or thesis. You could be wrapping up the work that you've been doing on some sort of like paper, exam, thesis. I don't know, I'm thinking of your education, I'm thinking of your academic path. It could feel like you have also wrapped up, like you have finalized some sort of like chapter of learning. It could be something that you have been learning for quite some time, my dear Cancerians, at least since September of last year, September of 2023. This could also be a time when you get rid of a car, or you sell a car, or you get rid of your preferred mode of transportation, and you say, okay, I'm not going to need this anymore because, I don't know, from now on I'm going to like bike into work or something like that. You could also be actively involved in matters connected with traveling, maybe planning to travel, maybe working on an itinerary, maybe also traveling for work-related purposes, or like thinking about traveling for work-related purposes. If there is any traveling that you're planning around this time, or that you are just kind of like sitting down with and thinking about around this time, it's probably not for pleasure. It's probably got like a very, very specific professional purpose, or at least it's something that is in some shape or form constructive, productive, and requires effort and organization, I'd say. This could also be a time when you are saying goodbye to a teacher, a mentor, someone who has been important in your life in terms of guiding you in some shape or form. Again, it feels quite bittersweet, because you can see how this person has been very impactful in your life, but at the same time you're looking towards the future and you're saying, okay, my future is filled with exciting things, and I've got new goals and I've got new objectives, and as a result, I will no longer be, I don't know, like working with this person, or I will no longer be needing the guidance of this person. I feel like this could also be a time when you realize that you need to give up on some sort of like routine or habit connected with writing, speaking, daily communications, daily social interactions. And this could also be a time when you are saying goodbye to a neighbor, maybe because they're moving away, and you might have been friends with them, and you might feel, you might feel happy maybe because they've found like a better place to live in, but at the same time you could feel a little bit, I don't know, sorry for yourselves, Cancerians. Leos, Leo Suns, and Leo Risings. Full moon in Virgo, 24th of February, active 3 days before, 3 days after. This one is putting the spotlight on your financial situation, Leos. So you are probably making some big payments, and you're also getting paid. I do see you getting paid around this time. It is quite likely. But if you are getting paid, probably quite a bit of this is going towards dealing with things like debt, shared expenses. So for instance, expenses that you have kind of like in common or together that you share with a partner. I do believe you are probably going to feel quite pressured to clear off some debt. You might also feel a little bit pressured into helping someone with their financial obligations. It could be a life partner, so it could be your spouse. It could also be someone else. Maybe I don't know. It's like a good friend or a colleague, or yeah, just kind of like someone close to you. And this is also a good time, if you ask me, to revisit your budget, to revisit your expenses, and to maybe get rid of some expenses, and maybe also get rid of some existing habits connected with money and finances, because you might realize that it's actually putting a little bit of a burden on you, maybe because, I don't know, you're finding yourselves, Leos, constantly reaching for that overdraft or for that credit card, and if you come to think of it, you might say, you know what, no. This isn't serving me in the long term. I like this full moon, however, because it's in a nice aspect to Jupiter in your house of career. For some of you, there could also be good news connected with a raise. Maybe good news connected with a bonus of some sorts. But again, everything that I've said previously still stands. You probably still have some maybe debts to take care of, or financial obligations to take care of. If you realize that someone is eating into your finances and you don't want that to be a thing anymore, now is a good time, if you ask me, to say, listen, enough. I mean, you need to kind of like take care of your financial obligations, or we need to find a different way for this to work, because this way of working is no longer advantageous for me. Virgo suns and Virgo risings, especially Virgo risings. Of course, you are the stars of this full moon because it's happening in your sign. So 24th of February, active 3 days before, 3 days after. This full moon is putting the spotlight on you, on who you are as an individual, on who you are turning into, on your life path, on your life direction, Virgos, but also on your identity and what part of you bring into relationships with others, especially relationships with life partners, so spouses, for instance, or committed partners, relationships with colleagues, co-workers, and work-related stakeholders, but also relationships with children. You might realize that you need to stop acting in a certain way in relationship to one of these people. And if you spend some time kind of like contemplating and thinking, you know what, I don't want to change how I come across. I still want to be my old self. I don't want to change the ways in which I don't know, for instance, communicate or share information or criticize this person. So if you realize that you don't want to change, you might need to communicate it to the other person, and they might decide to cut you off. Or they might decide that they no longer want to be working with you. They no longer want to be collaborating with you. And that's not a tragedy. That's not bad in any shape or form. However, you want this relationship to continue, it does look like you might need to change your ways a little bit. You might need to change how you come across a little bit, maybe change some of your habits, change some of your, more kind of like, critical kind of tendencies, and realize that they don't land well with this person. Maybe you're trying to do good. Maybe you have the best of intentions. Maybe you're trying to help them, and you're encountering a little bit of a wall, maybe because they are dealing with heavier times emotionally or whatever it is. Basically, if you want a relationship to continue, you might need to adjust a bit. There are some relationships that are probably going to come to a close. For example, maybe a business collaboration, a work collaboration, a client might leave. However, if that happens, it does seem to happen on good terms. In a way, I do see overall the full moon being nicely aspected to Jupiter. So there is a sense of you kind of like being aligned in terms of looking at the situation and saying, okay, maybe it's better to part ways. I do also believe that some of you might, you might decide to change some of your ways and habits, Virgos, when it comes to how you deal with your physical health. You might realize, okay, maybe I need a coach, maybe I need some sort of help, maybe I need some sort of external advisor and consultant to guide me on this path of improving my health, because some of your existing habits no longer seem to be serving you. And when I'm talking about someone from the outside helping you, it could also be a therapist or a counselor or someone who can kind of like help you redefine who you're going to be moving forward by broadening your perspective, by maybe bringing in a new perspective, by helping you see yourselves in a new light, Virgos. My dear Libras, Libra suns and Libra risings. 24th of February, active 3 days before, 3 days after. This full moon puts the spotlight on your axis of health and service. I feel like you need to rest around around this full moon, my dear Libras. Why? You might be a little bit exhausted, you might be a little bit tired, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed with everything that's been on your plate, and you might even need to take some things off your plate, Libras, in order to take maybe a few days off. There is a possibility that some of you could be, I don't know, having some kind of like minor health related issues. Maybe you're dealing with a cold, for instance, or something like that. I would not try to power through. I would just honor your need to rest, and maybe honor the fact that you need to take your health as seriously as you take your work in general. Speaking of work, some of you might be wrapping up a job. Some of you might be saying goodbye to a job. And some of you might also be saying goodbye within a work environment to a colleague, a team, or a boss. A boss might be leaving, essentially, Libras. It feels like you need to change some of your habits connected with work, Libras. There's something that you're doing that is maybe kind of like undermining your efforts. Maybe it's too much worrying. Maybe it's too much work that you're doing without getting enough visibility. I mean, especially in the corporate world, visibility. So your work being visible, the right people knowing that you're doing the work that they care about. I mean, that is a must. So it doesn't matter if you're kind of like breaking your back behind the scenes. If no one sees it, then you might be sorely disappointed when you realize that it doesn't count for much. So it does feel like maybe you need to change some of these habits connected with the way that you do your work. You could also be wrapping up some sort of a project work-wise and maybe feeling like it has turned out only partially. It has turned out the way that you wanted it to turn out. Maybe there's a part of you, the critical part, that wanted to spend some more time, that wanted to like do a better job, but it does feel like maybe a figure of authority, or maybe even like a deadline, an existing deadline, is saying, nope, you just have to hand it in, and that is it. And you might have a significant lesson to learn from this. Essentially, you have to stick to the deadlines, and you have to stick to the rules, and you have to stick to the systems and structures in place that you are expected to stick to. It doesn't matter if you want to do an even better job and spend even more time, I don't know, like tweaking, editing, polishing the work that you're doing. Sometimes it is just not possible. This could also be a very important time when you realize how you have been sabotaging your health, Libras, including from a mental health perspective, how you have been shooting yourselves in the foot. You might have this sort of like moment of awareness where you realize, okay, I didn't know that I was doing this thing, and I didn't realize that it was actually harming me. And you might do less of that moving forward, Libras. Scorpios, Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings. Full moon in Virgo, 24th of February, active 3 days before, 3 days after. This is putting the spotlight on your 11th house, so I feel like you're out into the world, connecting with people, maybe connecting with work colleagues, connecting with a group of people, a community, an organization that has brought people together because there is some sort of like tangible, concrete work that needs to be done as a group, essentially. This full moon is also putting the spotlight on your friendship sector. I feel like either your collaboration with a community of people or your friendship, your relationship with a friend, maybe, is being brought to a close in some shape or form. Maybe because you no longer want to be part of this community. Maybe because you're, I don't know, going to be much busier at home, looking after your family. Maybe you've got more responsibilities at home. Maybe you need to take care of your children more, and so on, or spend more time with your kids. So you could be saying goodbye to a community. You could also be saying goodbye to a friend, maybe because, again, you're moving house. Maybe you don't have as much time to spend with them. Maybe they are moving. Maybe they are relocating. Now, when I say closure, and when I say saying goodbye to a friend or saying goodbye to a community, it might not be goodbye forever. It might just be a reorganization of the relationship in some shape or form. So let's say that you've been doing volunteering and you've been getting together with a group of people passionate about the same topics that you're passionate about. as a result of increased duties and responsibilities at home, or as a result of wanting to put more effort into your individual passions and hobbies, maybe you're going to have less time to do volunteering, Scorpios. That's not bad. It's not, of course, it's not bad at all. But you might just need to communicate to the organization, to the group that you're part of, that you've got other priorities, and that is absolutely, absolutely, absolutely okay. I wanna say, it also feels like whatever you're deciding to focus more on, or whatever increased responsibilities you're having, Scorpio.
for being here, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you.